Welcome back to the deep dive. Today, we are undertaking a really intentional and thoughtful exploration of one of the richest, yet, well, shortest, narratives in the book of Genesis.
Mhm.
We're diving into a Bible essay focused on that antediluvian world, that pivotal era between the garden and the flood.
And specifically on a man whose story is brief, but, his impact was truly monumental. Tubal-Cain.
It's a name that's so easy to just gloss over when you're reading through Genesis 4, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. We tend to focus on the big tragedy of Cain and Abel or the shocking violence of Lamech.
Right.
But right there, tucked away in a genealogy, we find this figure who just crystallizes the paradox of early human civilization.
A paradox. How so?
Tubal-Cain stands as this biblical proof that brilliance and wickedness can thrive at the exact same time, in the same family even.
Okay, let's unpack this. The core of his identity is found in Genesis 4, verse 22. He is the son of Lamech and Zillah, and the text describes him as the forger of all kinds of tools out of bronze and iron.
And we just have to pause there for a second.
Yeah.
I mean, if you really let that sink in, the astonishment should hit you. These are people not long out of Eden, cursed to work the ground.
Right, life is supposed to be hard.
And yet, they retain this monumental capacity to think, to create, to innovate, to literally conquer the earth's raw materials.
It's such a powerful, enduring testament to the Imago Dei, that image of God.
It is. It's stubbornly persisting in this broken, fallen world.
And that persistence of the divine image, even after the fall, is precisely why Tubal-Cain is so critical for us to understand.
Exactly. He embodies this tension between God's general goodness to all humanity and our specific moral failure.
So the essay we're looking at makes it clear. His ability to forge metals was a genuine gift.
Yes, a gift bestowed by God's common grace. That's the knowledge required to harness the earth's resources. It's a good thing.
But this is the crucial but. The moment that divine gift, that spark of ingenuity, is placed into the hands of a heart that's been fractured by the fall,
It gains an ambiguous edge. It's not purely a blessing anymore.
it becomes something that can radically accelerate sin.
That's the central, sobering lesson we have to extract from this figure. I mean, innovation that's disconnected from holiness, from worship, no matter how staggering it seems to us.
It's ultimately empty.
It serves a temporary and, a potentially corrupting purpose. Tubal-Cain represents the absolute peak of civilization's material progress at that time.
But progress alone is powerless. It can't save humanity from its own rebellion.
Exactly. We see the material world just advancing at warp speed, while the spiritual world is in a total state of collapse.
To really understand the weight of Tubal-Cain's invention, we have to immerse ourselves in his world, the antediluvian age.
Yeah.
And this wasn't some time of primitive stagnation, was it?
Not at all. Genesis 4 describes a world of incredible velocity. This is the period from the fall to the great judgment of the flood.
And cultures developing at this breathtaking yet morally skewed pace.
The sources really emphasize that after the expulsion from Eden, humanity didn't just, passively accept their situation.
No, they were aggressive.
They aggressively sought to establish permanence, stability, outside of God's covenant.
And the first marker of this accelerated human self-reliance is Cain, isn't it?
It is Cain building a city named after his son, Enoch, which we see in Genesis 4, verse 17.
And what does building a city really signify in this context? It's more than just putting up some houses, right?
Oh, absolutely. The city is the ultimate statement of self-sufficiency. It's a declaration.
The declaration of what?
It says, we are here to stay. We are establishing our own legacy, our own permanence, completely independent of that transient, faithful life represented by Abel and later by Noah.
So it's a declaration of human autonomy.
Exactly. And this ambition to build, to master their environment, it really defines Cain's entire lineage.
And this ambition, it just explodes into mastery across several vital cultural domains. The essay highlights that Genesis 4, verses 20 to 22, it details this crucial triad of cultural mastery, achieved remarkably quickly.
And it proves that the curse after the fall, it didn't obliterate human genius.
Not at all.
And that triad is just fascinating because it covers the foundational pillars of any complex society.
Okay, so let's walk through them. First up is Jabal.
Right. Jabal mastered pastoral life. He is called the father of those who live in tents and raise livestock.
And that's way more significant than just owning a few animals.
Far more. It marks the transition from, subsistence hunting to organized herding. It requires this complex knowledge of animal husbandry migration patterns.
And crucially, a new type of organized economy.
That's it. This transition from a stationary agrarian life to a semi-nomadic pastoral one, it means Jabal's line needed portable dwellings, the tents you mentioned, and established property rights, organized exchange.
It's a societal, legal, and economic leap all at once.
It is. It requires social organization, coordination, and, well, perhaps the very first forms of formalized trade.
And this development, it creates the resources, the food and material wealth that allow for the next major leap.
Which is leisure and art.
That brings us to Jabal's brother. He mastered the arts and music.
Yes, defined as the father of all who play stringed instruments and pipes. This is not about survival anymore.
No, this is about expression, about contemplation, the cultivation of beauty.
And that is a huge sign of civilizational sophistication. The development of complex musical instruments, not just, banging rocks together.
Right.
It indicates that society had achieved enough stability and surplus wealth to support specialization.
So people could dedicate their time to abstract thought, developing theories of harmony, aesthetics, performance.
It speaks to a deep underlying spiritual or emotional need being expressed.
Whether that expression was directed toward God or,
as seems very likely in Cain's line, directed towards self-celebration.
Okay, so we have the mastery of food and economy with Jubal.
Mm-hmm.
We have the mastery of art and expression with Jubal. And then the final foundational pillar, the mastery of materials, all represented by Tubal-Cain.
He's the one who bridges the gap between raw resources and functional tools.
He's the engineer.
The engineer and the technician that enables everything else. He provides the means to plow the field more effectively, to cut the wood more precisely for the instruments.
To build the cities more sturdily.
Everything.
I really want to spend some time on the technological elite he represents. The sources emphasize the significance of him pioneering both bronze and iron. It's so easy for us today to just hear those words and completely miss the monumental challenge they represented in an ancient context.
And this is where we fully grasp his mythical stature, as the essay puts it. Bronze, it's an alloy.
A deliberate mixture.
Right, a mixture of copper and tin.
Yep.
It requires sourcing two different minerals, heating them to a temperature sufficient for melting. We're talking around 1,000 degrees Celsius.
Which is achievable with relatively primitive charcoal kilns.
Right, and this was already revolutionary, a massive step forward.
But the text specifically mentions iron. Why is the inclusion of iron such a huge technical clue about Tubal-Cain's genius?
Iron is a complete game changer. The sources really stress this. Iron is abundant, unlike copper and tin, which are, geographically scarce.
Okay.
But to smelt iron effectively, you need furnace temperatures approaching 1,500 degrees Celsius.
Wow.
Far, far higher than what's needed for bronze. And what's more, in this early period, they likely weren't producing true liquid iron. They were creating what's called a bloom.
A bloom? What's that?
It's a spongy mass of iron and slag, impurities.
Which would require immense skill and just sheer labor to consolidate.
Exactly. You then had to hammer that hot bloom repeatedly to squeeze out the impurities and turn it into a usable tool.
So to master that whole complex process.
Which requires specialized furnace construction, ventilation control, a deep understanding of thermal mechanics.
To be the single most advanced technician of the age.
That's right. And it explains why he is the forger of all kinds of tools. His innovation meant stronger, more durable, and sharper instruments for everyone.
So Tubal-Cain wasn't just working with what he found. He was creating alloys and pioneering industrial processes that would literally define human eras for millennia.
He empowered civilization overnight.
But, as we've noted, this incredible technological breakthrough occurred in this profound environment of spiritual decline.
And the sources point us directly to Tubal-Cain's father, Lamech, as the defining moral character of that environment.
Lamech didn't receive his son's deaths with gratitude or humility, did he?
Not at all. He immediately pressed them into the service of his own magnified, violent pride.
He's the culmination of Cain's rebellion, but now with all the new resources and tools of civilization at his fingertips. We read his chilling Song of the Sword in Genesis 4, verses 23 and 24. I have killed a man for wounding me, a young man for injuring me. If Cain is avenged 7 times, then Lamech 77 times.
That song it's less a confession and much more boast.
A terrifying boast.
It reveals this terrifying psychological shift. Cain was judged by God, but Lamech, he doesn't seek justice or fear divine consequences. He dictates his own law.
He declares an exponential scale of vengeance. 77 times.
He is the very first person in Scripture to establish personal, magnified retribution as a core societal value.
And what gives him the sheer confidence to make a boast like that? There's a psychological link to his son's work, isn't there?
Oh, absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
He's boasting of his own personal power, a power that's undoubtedly amplified by the razor-sharp iron swords and bronze shields now flowing from Tubal-Cain's forge.
The sharper the weapon.
The greater the capacity for exponential violence, the strength and precision that Tubal-Cain introduced, which could have resulted in robust farming and construction.
Instead becomes the very foundation of Lamech's violent tyranny.
Lamech's song, set against the backdrop of that cultural triad, the herding, the music, the metallurgy, it just paints this vivid picture.
A world of unprecedented prosperity, complex arts, incredible technological genius.
But a world entirely devoid of conscience, where human power, not divine mandate, is the ultimate authority.
So this first section leaves us with this profound image. Human genius, rooted in the divine image, achieving spectacular material success.
But that success is immediately co-opted and accelerated by human wickedness, setting the stage for divine judgment.
So we've established the staggering influence of Tubal-Cain, yet the biblical narrative gives him just a single verse. The brevity is striking. If he was so significant, why isn't there more coverage? I mean, why did the Holy Spirit preserve just his name and his profession?
Well, the biblical text, it operates on a really selective principle. Genesis isn't trying to be an exhaustive history of human technology.
Right, it's a theological history.
A theological history of redemption.
Oh.
Tubal-Cain's name is preserved precisely because it marks a watershed moment in the line of Cain, the peak of worldly achievement.
So by detailing his specific contribution, the metallurgy, the text is affirming the astonishing scope of human achievement without God.
That's it. It's the ultimate example. This is the best that humanity, relying on its own genius, can produce.
And the record just stops there.
It does. And, speaking of detail, there's that unusual mention of his sister, Nama, right at the end of the genealogy.
I've always wondered about that.
In these kinds of genealogies focused on achievement, sisters are very rarely mentioned unless they represent something specific.
And Nama's name?
Her name literally means pleasant or lovely.
I see. So if the line of Cain culminates in technology with Tubal-Cain and amplified violence with Lamech,
then perhaps Nama represents the cultural indulgence or the aesthetic beauty that defines their sophisticated yet corrupted civilization.
It's a thoughtful reading, so the genealogy ends with this flourish of worldly triumph.
A complete package. The capacity for organized life, the enjoyment of art and beauty, and the power of technology. It is a complete, well-developed, self-sufficient culture.
But its ambition is fundamentally horizontal.
Entirely. Focused completely on mastery of the earth.
And this horizontal ambition, this pursuit of self-glory through creation, it creates the necessary tension for the author to make the spiritual pivot.
Yes. The narrative immediately and quite abruptly shifts away from Cain's lineage to introduce the line of Seth in Genesis 5.
And this is a deliberate theological contrast.
And it has to be. The line of Cain is defined by its cultural noise.
Yeah.
The city building, the musical instruments, the clang of the forge. Their legacy is technological achievement and profound corruption.
They are defined by what they made.
Exactly. And what defines Seth's line?
It's the profound silence and simplicity of spiritual devotion.
Yes. The essay contrasts the material achievements of Cain's line with the defining action of Seth's. And what is that action?
At that time, people began to call on the name of the Lord.
The contrast could not be starker. For Seth's line, the ultimate act of meaning and purpose was not the invention of a better plow or the construction of a stronger wall.
It was the act of worship.
Of turning vertically toward the Creator. True greatness in the divine economy is measured by our vertical relationship, our devotion, not by the complexity or the volume of our cultural output.
That gives us such an enduring framework for evaluating human effort, doesn't it?
It really does.
The innovators of Cain's line, they achieved temporal fame. Their names are recorded for their accomplishments, but their achievement was meaningless in the face of judgment.
While the faith of Seth's line, though it was probably quiet and lacked any technological headlines,
That's the spiritual conduit that preserved the promise of redemption.
and we absolutely must connect the moral climate of Lamech back to Tubal-Cain's inventions. It's impossible to separate the tools from the violence.
So did the ability to forge iron cause the violence?
No. The violence was already in the heart. But Tubal-Cain's tools acted as a powerful amplifier.
They provided the efficient means for rapid, widespread destruction.
And if you look ahead just a little bit, to Genesis 6, the tragedy is complete. The world that's described is full of violence.
Where every intention of the thoughts of his heart was only evil continually.
That's the world that was built and equipped by Tubal-Cain's line. The strong tools just made sin easier, more lethal, and more encompassing.
So Tubal-Cain's story is this profound hinge.
It is. It sits right between the glorious promise of human potential, that persistent imago Dei, and the crushing reality of human depravity.
Proving that technological progress without moral righteousness doesn't just plateau.
No, it accelerates the path toward self-destruction and judgment. The sophisticated civilization of Cain's line, despite all their genius, was completely washed away.
This brings us to the deeper theological principles at play here, which are so important for thoughtful adult Christians studying this text. Tubal-Cain is a perfect ancient illustration of what theologians call common grace.
Common grace is such a crucial concept. It refers to God's general non-saving goodness and favor that he extends to all of creation and to all of humanity,
Irrespective of their relationship with him.
Exactly. It's the preserving, restraining, and enabling grace that just keeps the world functional.
The sources for a deep dive reference Matthew 5, verse 45, where Jesus confirms this principle. He says, God causes his sun to rise on the evil and the good, and sends rain on the righteous and the unrighteous.
And the rain and sun are prerequisites for civilization, and we have to see Tubal-Cain's genius through that exact same lens.
So the ability to discover metallurgy, the complex ingenuity needed to manipulate natural elements, that wasn't something Cain's line just invented from nothing.
No, it was a capacity rooted in the image of God, sustained by God's providence, and directed by the general knowledge God allows all people to access.
So Tubal-Cain actually advanced the entire human race. His discovery of stronger tools would have benefited the righteous line of Seth just as much as his own wicked line.
Absolutely. His very existence testifies to this residual divine goodness in fallen humanity. That creative spark somehow survived the catastrophe of the fall.
But here is the major warning from the essay, isn't it? The brilliance of the gift does not guarantee the spiritual condition of the recipient.
Not at all. Tubal-Cain's genius did not lead his father, Lamech, or his society back to the worship of God.
This is the mechanism of corruption.
It is. The biblical warning, captured so well in Romans chapter 1, is that humanity knew God. They saw the Creator's power and intelligence reflected in the natural world and in the genius of men like Tubal-Cain.
But they actively refused to glorify him or give him thanks.
And instead, they exchanged the glory of the incorruptible God for the worship of their own achievements.
The irony is so powerful. Tubal-Cain was using God-given ingenuity to conquer God-given materials, only to use the resulting tools to serve self-glorification and rebellion.
The entire purpose of the gift to glorify the giver was completely inverted.
And this raises a really fascinating question about the neutrality of technology itself. I often hear people say, well, technology is neutral, it's just how we use it.
Yeah. But the essay suggests a more nuanced understanding.
Okay.
While the metal itself is morally neutral, tools and knowledge are never neutral when they are possessed by a fallen human heart.
They're instantly corrupted by sinful intent.
Instantly. The tool might be morally inert, but its invention and its application are not. It immediately enters a spiritual battlefield.
So if I create a powerful social media algorithm, meant to connect people, but my internal desire is to control information or to drive division,
then the tool, however brilliant, is corrupted from the very start.
that's the heart of the matter.
It is, and it's beautifully articulated in James chapter 4. What causes fights and quarrels among you? Don't they come from your desires that battle within you? You desire but do not have, so you kill.
Tubal-Cain did not create the murderous desire in Lamech.
No, he simply handed Lamech a much more effective means to carry out that desire.
So the forge becomes this stage where God's common grace gift was hijacked by the unredeemed desires of the human heart,
Transforming a potential source of blessing into an undeniable source of curse and accelerated conflict.
If we broaden this out, we can see Tubal-Cain illustrating a key idea from a dispensational, or maybe more simply, a historical perspective.
Yes, the clear divergence of human history. God allows one thread of humanity to develop outside of the direct redemptive covenant.
And that's the line of Cain.
Right. Culturally masterful, achieving peak civilization, but functionally secular, and ending in total judgment.
They operate entirely on self-reliance and these common grace gifts.
Correct. They represent civilization without covenant and progress without promise. The other line, the line of Seth and eventually Noah, operates on covenant and faith, preserving the spiritual promise that culminates in Christ.
So Tubal-Cain's story proves that you can reach the zenith of human technological capacity.
But if that genius is not anchored in worship, it is merely temporal and has zero contribution to eternal life or salvation.
It provides so much clarity for us today when we see incredible human achievements in the arts or science or technology from non-believers.
We can appreciate the residual imago Dei and God's common grace.
But we also have to remember that its ultimate destiny is perishable unless it is consciously redirected toward the glory of the Creator.
So we've followed Tubal-Cain from the forge to the flood.
And now we have to translate this ancient narrative into practical lessons for our 21st century stewardship. What does the smith of bronze and iron teach us about our work and our genius today?
Well, the first lesson, and we have to start here, is what the essay calls Lesson A. Human creativity is divine in origin. This really counteracts any sense that our secular work is less valuable. Our capacity to invent, discover, analyze, build, whether you're designing a microchip or writing a budget.
It's fundamentally rooted in the divine image.
Exactly. Tubal-Cain's mastery of thermodynamics and metallurgy was a reflection of the Creator, the great artisan of the universe.
And for us, this means acknowledging that all our talents, technological, artistic, musical, logistical, they are God-given gifts.
They inherently reflect their source, even if we abuse them.
And that should imbue our daily work with inherent dignity.
The second lesson, Lesson B, is the perpetual warning. Technology's dual edge. We spent time on this, but let's bring it forward to today.
Right. Tubal-Cain's tools were not neutral in the hands of Lamech.
And our modern tools carry the exact same weight.
Absolutely. Think about the internet. It can facilitate the rapid spread of the gospel to unreached peoples.
Global flourishing.
Or the exact same infrastructure can be used for deep exploitation, global misinformation campaigns, and the destruction of innocence.
It's the bronze and iron paradox writ globally.
What about bioengineering or artificial intelligence?
Staggering ingenuity, capable of curing diseases, solving vast logistical problems.
Right.
But without moral clarity and the fear of the Lord, they can be instruments of exploitation, surveillance, or even global-scale violence. The critical question for us is still the same.
Is the technological strength serving the betterment of humanity in Christ?
Or is it just magnifying Lamech's 77-fold vengeance?
The choice is ours, but the consequence of that choice is amplified by the sheer power of the tool.
A wooden plow causes damage slowly, an iron plow increases efficiency dramatically, for good or for ill.
A handwritten lie spreads slowly. A deepfake video spreads instantaneously, for good or ill.
And we come to Lesson C, which is the brevity of achievement. And this is a really sobering truth delivered by the flood narrative.
Tubal-Cain's civilization had mastered technology, art, organized living. They built cities.
And yet, none of their achievements could save them from judgment. Their legacy, though impressive, was temporal dust.
The contrast with Noah is so powerful here. Noah wasn't a city builder or an ironsmith.
No.
He was, the text tells us, a man who found favor in the eyes of the Lord.
That's the difference. His cultural output building the ark was an act of faith and obedience, not an act of self-glorification.
That's the distinction that echoes across time. The only thing that endured the flood was the spiritual response.
Noah's obedience and faith.
So the distinction that matters is how we respond to God, not the volume or the visible success of our cultural output. We have to constantly ask ourselves, am I seeking Tubal-Cain's fame or am I seeking Noah's favor?
Which moves us directly to the final, comprehensive call to action. Lesson D, stewardship for God's glory.
If our gifts are intrinsically divine, but our achievements are fundamentally temporal, then our motivation for everything has to be intentional.
Right. In the Apostle Paul's mandate in 1 Corinthians 10, verse 31, it offers the ultimate calibration for this.
So whether you eat or drink or whatever you do it all for the glory of God.
This means Tubal-Cain's forge, the modern coder's algorithm, the artist's brush, the executive strategy session.
All of it.
It must all be intentionally dedicated and offered back to the Lord in worship.
And when we dedicate our gifts to God, we transform the value proposition of our labor.
Completely.
If we work merely for self-glory, as Lamech did, our achievements, no matter how great, they just perish and are forgotten.
But when we approach our work with humble reverence, seeking to reflect His creativity and serve His kingdom, even the smallest act of service takes on an eternal weight.
It changes the foundation entirely. The genius is no longer the means to build our own Tower of Babel.
It becomes the means to participate in God's ongoing work of creation and redemption. And that is the fundamental difference between the trajectory of Cain's line and the enduring legacy of Seth's line applied to our lives today.
The implication is so clear. The energy, the time, the resources we pour into mastering our craft, just like Tubal-Cain mastering metallurgy, it must be done under the Lord's watchfulness.
Lest we labor in vain.
As we conclude this deep dive into Tubal-Cain, we are left to ponder this magnificent paradox of his life.
He was a beacon of human creativity and at the same time, a stunning cautionary tale.
His story serves as such a powerful reminder that culture, when it's divorced from Christ, is inherently fleeting. Genius without worship is hollow.
And progress that ignores righteousness doesn't save us. It just accelerates the consequences of sin by giving us greater means to execute our own fallen desires.
But the caution contains this powerful encouragement.
When we acknowledge that our ingenuity and creativity come from the Creator, and when we deliberately surrender those gifts to His purposes, our work is redeemed.
It ceases to be just self-expression and becomes eternal service.
So the fundamental challenge Tubal-Cain poses for every generation, including ours, is simple, but it's incredibly profound.
Will we use our gifts, our intelligence or technology, our resources for ourselves, pursuing our own legacy and vengeance?
Or will we dedicate them wholeheartedly to the glory of God?
This brings us to our concluding reflection from the sources, found in Psalm 127, verse 1, a verse that just perfectly summarizes the futility of human self-reliance.
Unless the Lord builds the house, the builders labor in vain. Unless the Lord watches over the city, the guards stand watch in vain.
This is the critical warning, isn't it? The efforts of human labor, the brilliance of human genius, the security of human self-reliance, when these are undertaken apart from God's direction and presence,
they are ultimately empty and futile. The forger blazes, but the line perishes. The civilization is built, but it falls.
But the encouragement is equally strong.
Yes. When we invite the Lord to be the foundation, the master builder, and the overseer of our creativity and our labor, that work becomes meaningful. It is protected by Him, and it will endure.
It transforms from secular achievement into eternal service.
May you approach your work and your gifts today, whatever your domain of mastery may be, with humble reverence. Seek to dedicate your abilities and creativity to the Lord, knowing that when He oversees your labor, it will not be in vain.